Kirk?
Hello, my little Luxes. Welcome back to another Luxy Charms, and I'm your host, Tracy Lux. And today we are just kind of winging it for my look since we're getting so close to Halloween, and I'm so super excited for it because you know what? Whatever little joy I can find in life, and I am just going to take it. And since I love Halloween so much, it's my favorite holiday. I've been doing the Halloween countdown on my Patreon, on X and everything. So just kind of coming up with different looks, themes, that kind of thing. I don't really have a theme. I'm just winging it basically this time, which kind of fitting because this one's kind of a fairy inspired look. So winging it, ha ha. Anyway. But today I am finally going to be doing my movie review for Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, the reason why I ended up on this one, this is one of Tobe Hooper's most famous films that he had ever directed and created. He also was a writer, a part of it. But also, I wanted to find a film that was on Tubi. Tubi is a lot easier for me to get a hold of the films, to watch them and that, and I appreciate every single person that gave me suggestions. Your movies are all fantastic, all on my list to eventually watch, to eventually do reviews on. But after just taking different considerations in that, I landed on this one. I really want to talk about Leatherface and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just for several different reasons. But anyway, before I ramble way too long, because, you know, I like to talk. But let's go ahead and jump into it. This is a spoiler alert. If you hate spoilers and have never seen the film, this is your warning. And viewer discretion is advised.
How do I get there, Frank?
Well, there's a trail down there between them two old sheds.
Can I go too?
I think you better stay here.
Now, I have stated before, because in my earlier movie reviews, I used to give the cast and that kind of stuff. I now have it in the description. It's been a while since the last time I've said it, but I will apologize if I butcher the few names that I do give while giving facts or talking about it. When I was younger and first saw Tobe Hooper's name, I thought it was Tobe. And I mean, it's just the way that it's spelled and everything, but not realizing that it was pronounced Tobe Hooper, which makes way more sense. But, so, he is the director, and I also said he's one of the writers. But the other writer, which I apologize if I mispronounce his name, and his name is Kim Henkel. But like I had stated before, this one was first released in 1974, and the story follows Sally, her brother Franklin, and a few of their friends, and it happens on the date of August 18th, 1973. Hot in the summertime, and it's also taking place in Texas, which, I mean, obviously, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Duh. But we open into the film learning that the graveyard where Sally and Franklin's grandfather is buried has been vandalized. In fact, several of the graves have been vandalized. Several of the bodies have been dug up and have been desecrated. So obviously, Sally wants to find out if their grandfather's grave is okay. So they travel together as a group to the graveyard to make sure that everything is perfectly fine.
My granddaddy's buried here. Can we find out if anything happened to him?
What's your granddaddy's name?
And once they find out that the grandfather's grave appears to be completely untouched and is not one of the graves vandalized, the group kind of collectively decides, hey, since we're in this area, why don't we go and check out Sally and Franklin's grandfather's old farmhouse? But they should have seen the red flags and the warnings on the wall. I mean, all symbolic, obviously, but there were several different things that had happened to them that should have been warnings to them to not do what they were doing. One of them being that on the way they went by the slaughterhouse, and it just so happened that this is at the time that they find a hitchhiker. So they stop to pick him up, and this guy is bizarre. And the longer they talk to him, they realize that he is a lunatic, that he is completely dangerous, and he ends up cutting Franklin up after cutting himself as well. So the group eject him from the vehicle, rightfully so, and continue on their way to when they realize, hey, we need to get some gas. So they stop at the next gas station that they come upon. But this place just happens to be completely out of gas, and they won't get it till later that day, maybe even the following day. But they do, for some odd reason, have prime barbecue out in the middle of nowhere. No gas though. So then they kind of come to the conclusion that since they're going to the grandfather's old place, that maybe, possibly, he's got some gasoline out there. So they're talking about it. Well, the owner of the gas station, and he says, hey, you guys really shouldn't be going out to other people's properties. That's not right of you.
Well, now look, you boys don't want to go mess around no old house. But those things is dangerous. You're liable to get hurt.
And Franklin ends up explaining to the guy that, well, no, my dad owns this property. This isn't just some random property. So when the guy realizes who they are, he starts giving them warnings and saying, you really shouldn't go out there anyways. People don't like having strangers around in the area. So another kind of red flag and warning. But I mean, they're not going to listen, and they need the gas anyways, so they make it out to the deserted farm place, and wouldn't you know, there's no gas to be found anywhere on this place as well. A couple of the friends decide that they're just going to travel down to the old watering hole because this is in the middle of the summer in Texas. It's hot outside, so they decide, well, we'll just go cool off since we're not having any luck finding any gasoline. Well, they happen upon this old watering hole that's completely dry out now, but they happen to hear a strange sound in the middle of nowhere. So one of the neighbors that is quite a distance away from the deserted farmhouse, but they can hear a generator, which tells them, hey, there has to be gasoline somewhere on that farm.
Gasoline. I can leave him my guitar, give him a couple bucks.
So they travel over to the place to see if they can ask somebody if they can make a trade or figure some way of getting this gas from them. But wouldn't you know it, this is the home of the demented cannibal family that Leatherface happens to live in. And one by one, each one of the main characters in this film fall victim to this very creepy cannibalistic family until you get to the last one standing, who happens to be Sally. But it is funny to note that only one person in this film, called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, only one individual is actually killed by a chainsaw, and that was Sally's brother Franklin, who was killed in front of her. Sally, of course, trying to get away from Leatherface, running away as fast as she can. She makes it back to that gas station and is getting help from the gas attendant or the gas station owner, whatever you want to call him. But come to find out, this guy is not there to help her. He is a part of this cannibalistic family. So she is captured and taken back to this creepy farmhouse that has dead bodies, animals, bones, just any kind of gross and disgusting thing you can think about is rotting in this household. But Sally is very lucky, and she's able to slip away and escape from them when they slip up and make a mistake. So she's able to take off and get away thanks to the fact that a passerby, besides the one that was a truck driver and happened to smash into the hitchhiker, yes, the hitchhiker from earlier, who was also a part of this family, wouldn't you know? So she had luck from that. But another pickup happens to come by when Leatherface is chasing Sally with his chainsaw, but she is able to jump into this random pickup that goes by, and she is able to get away. And as Sally is able to make this escape, you see Leatherface in the middle of the road, in his anger, takes his chainsaw and starts swinging it around madly. It's important to note that the ending scene with Leatherface swinging around crazily with the chainsaw that has been turned into memes, it's been turned into parodies, GIFs. Everybody who especially loves horror movies knows the scene. But this scene wasn't written in there, not right away. It was completely impromptu and added in after the fact. This wasn't originally even going to be for the ending. How it had originally came to be was that the scene where, while Sally is running away from Leatherface and she makes it to the gas station, that Tobe Hooper and a few others had given direction to Gunnar Hansen, the actor who played Leatherface, and had said that just go crazy, just start doing some random things while you have this chainsaw. And while he was in the parking lot, he just started swinging around crazily with this chainsaw. And as they recorded it, they realized how amazing this actually was. So that scene actually became a deleted scene, and they took the same idea and what Gunnar had done and had added it to the ending of the film instead. And it's also funny to note that while that scene is going on and you just kind of see it abruptly stop, that's because while they were filming it, since poor Gunnar could barely see out of this leather face that he was wearing, that with his poor vision, and of course when you're swinging around quickly and you have something heavy in your arms, it's easy to lose control, lose your balance, your footing, and where you're at. And the crew, while they were filming him, all of a sudden he started crazily coming towards them. And this chainsaw was real. It wasn't like it is today where there's safety precautions and that. The chainsaw was real. It wasn't taken apart. It still had its chain. It still worked like a chainsaw and could hurt somebody. It abruptly ends the way it does because the crew that was filming him had to just start running so that he didn't accidentally hurt and injure anybody. And Gunnar Hansen also likes to note the funny fact that even in his lift boots, and in his heavy attire and everything for the Leatherface character, he could still outrun Marilyn Burns, who played Sally. So you'll note the next time you watch it especially, that during the scene, especially in the woods when he is chasing Sally's character, he just kind of starts doing some random things. Like you'll see him zip to the side, or you'll see him take the chainsaw and start hacking into branches and things like that. That's what he was doing. He was trying to slow down the process so that he didn't catch up to the actress while she was running. And Leatherface is based off of a real serial killer, and he's based off of Ed Gein. Now, I should also note that this is not the only film that is based off of Ed Gein. You also have Psycho from 1960, and you have The Silence of the Lambs from 1991. Now, the weirdest part to note is the fact that truly Ed Gein really isn't a serial killer because he only killed 2 people. Now, that's still horrible when you think about it, but in the terms of what society considers a serial killer, he's not really technically one, even though he's still a very creepy individual. And what makes him the most creepy was the fact he was a grave robber. But it wasn't just the grave robbing that was atrocious. It was the fact that the bodies of the people that he would dig up, he would skin them, and he would use the skin to create different objects. He would make lampshades, he would make belts, he would make clothes, he even made himself a dress and a skin suit so that he could make himself look like a woman. These are those weird, horrific things that just, for a lot of us, we can find fascinating in the fact of what made this person do this, which is probably why he ended up basically inspiring all these different films and inspiring not just Leatherface, but if you look at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the entire cannibalistic family is loosely based off of Ed Gein. One of the examples is the Hitchhiker, because you later on find out towards the end of the film that he was, in fact, the one who had done the vandalism at the graveyard. So he is a throwback to Ed Gein as well, because of the fact that he was a grave robber. And Leatherface is the other big one to note, for the fact that he used the masks and it was the idea of the skin suit, because unfortunately that's what Ed Gein did. The idea of Leatherface was the fact that he had no personality himself. He was mentally handicapped and everything, and the idea is that he's supposed to be a blank slate and that he is whatever his family wants him to be. And if he wants a certain persona or personality, he would put on a mask. He had technically 3 masks that he wore. He had the Leatherface mask, which was the killing mask. So any time that he was killing someone, that's generally the one that he had. And he also had the old lady mask. That was the one where he was the homemaker, where he was taking care of the home, he was cooking, he was cleaning. And then the last one, which was the pretty lady mask. And that was the one that he wore for the dinner, where he would dress up. The mask had on makeup and was the pretty mask. But that was the persona he had. If he didn't have the mask, he had no personality. Granted, we never saw him without a mask. He still was whatever the family wanted him to be. And it's weird to think of in the note that, especially Tobe Hooper kind of mentioned himself, the fact that Leatherface's character was supposed to be this very childlike, baby-like character that at the end of the day, when you're looking at it from an outside perspective, he was just freaking out and scared and defending his home, because each time these people were coming into his home, you could tell he was clearly upset. These people kept showing up. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, obviously this is a family of cannibals, and they're all terrible people. It's a weird psychology if you want to start looking at it from both ends, that this kind of becomes a study of nature versus nurture. And what kind of person would Leatherface have been if he wasn't with a demented, crazy family who ate people? And the original title for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was supposed to be Leatherface. And Gunnar himself had flat out said he was disappointed when he found out that Tobe Hooper was going to change the title, because he felt that as soon as it had changed, it took the importance of Leatherface and kind of made it to where he wasn't a staple, a mark anymore. But to this day, we still remember and think of Leatherface. He's still a part of the famous slashers that we all talk about. It would be interesting to see the differences if it had been just called Leatherface instead of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but nowadays, I mean, we know who Leatherface is, no matter what the title of the film is. Now, I really want to talk about the dinner scene that happens on this movie. And the cast and the crew all say how miserable it was. They all remember it in terror, and they all kind of comment about it's one of the worst days of their lives. And there's certain things and aspects that happen to why this even ended up happening the way that it had happened. It's important to note that Gunnar Hansen, while he was Leatherface, his costume was painted and dyed in such a special way that it couldn't be washed. So the poor guy was wearing the same clothes the entire time that they were filming in this heat. It's the summer in Texas and everything, and he couldn't clean and wash anything. So the crew and the cast themselves flat out said that he started smelling so bad, and it's not his fault or anything, but that people would want to avoid him because of the stench of the clothes. And now they're in this enclosed room, and it's not just that. All of them are hot, sweaty. The temperature is 110 degrees. There's no air conditioning or anything. And the windows, even if they are open, they had heavy black curtains over the windows because this scene is supposed to be taking place at night. So there's no breeze, there's nothing. There's rotting meat on the table. I mean, when they started off, the meat wasn't rotting, but because of how long they were filming for, the meat started getting disgusting, gross. While they're all in this tight, hot space, they all just start getting miserable, start feeling like they're all losing their minds. And they were doing all this filming through a 27-hour period. 27 hours straight of trying to film this scene. And there's a reason why this ended up happening. Because normally, you know, they probably would have done small spurts, probably would have given them some more breaks and everything. And the only breaks that they really could have was like 5 minutes in between, just so that they could get a breather outside. But the reason why this happened is because of John Dugan, who played the character of the old man in the family. Because while he was getting into his old age makeup, and since it was for like 4 or 5 hours straight, he hated the entire process. He hated how the makeup felt on him. And he was so uncomfortable that he just put his foot down and said, "I'm not doing this again. So once you get me into character, I'm going to do all of my filming, and that's it. I'm not being put into this makeup ever again." So they had no choice. And just picture that. So 27 hours straight of everyone else that was there doing the scenes. That's not including John Dugan's himself, because you have to add the time period of him being put into makeup. So he's got like 30 plus hours straight of working on the set, which is insane to think about nowadays with the safety procedures, the laws, all that stuff that's going on in today's world. This wouldn't happen, or at least it shouldn't happen, I should say. So once he put his foot down and said, "I'm not going to do this again," all of the scenes with him in it had to be shot in that day. So you end up with this very miserable scene, but I mean, it adds to the dementedness and the reality of it, because several of the actors themselves said that they were so miserable and they became so crazed out of their minds that sometimes they really did turn into that character and were really confused about what was going on around them. So things to note of why we have safety measures on sets nowadays, so something like this never happens ever again. And Edwin Neal, who played the character of the Hitchhiker and the grave robber, if we're going to be direct about him, had noted that this was the worst day of his life, and he had never been more miserable than he was when they were filming that scene. And he said he was a soldier in Vietnam. So that tells you just how bad that day really was. Ugh. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. But anyway, I could go on and on about the behind the scenes to this film, and I will hopefully continue on with some trivia on the shorts and everything. And it's not even me like going fully into depth about talking about the psychology of it and more of the in-depth of what Tobe Hooper was trying to get to. And I mean, obviously, it should go without a doubt that I love this film. This is one of the beginning steps to our famous slasher films. Leatherface is one of our slashers. And you have to have this stepping stone to lead up to where we are in horror today. I mean, that should go without saying, but anybody that knows me knows how much I love history. I love how things tie together. The fact that this is based off of a real semi-serial killer, grave robber, and that there's several other movies that are based off of him. But yes, I love this film. It's not my top favorite film, and it's one of those where it's taken me a long time to revisit it, because it is creepy. It does have that dark tone to it, and you can feel the misery that the actors and actresses are feeling while they're doing this film. And it just was hot, it was miserable, they had long hours that they were working, but it paid off because this film is so well done in the creepiness, in the atmosphere, and as desensitized as we are nowadays, that back then this movie was very horrific. And I mean, it still is pretty gripping when it comes to being grotesque and disgusting, and that you can just feel miserable like the rest of them do. You can smell the disgusting things around them because the things they were using were all real. The dead animals that they were using were from a veterinary clinic, so they were real dead animals. Now, obviously, in today's world, we want to hear things where no animal was harmed in the making of the film. We want to continue that. Now, I'm assuming that the animals they were using were pre-dead, and that's why they came from a vet clinic and that. But it's one of those where, like I said, you can feel how miserable everything was there. So it's gripping, it's creepy, it's dark. So I just enjoy this one a lot. And it is a classic horror film, which is so weird to think about that, yes, this is classic from 1974. But I want to thank you for joining me on another Luxy Charms, and please let me know, what do you think of this film? What are your deeper thoughts on it? And if you would like to follow me and my other social medias, or on my Etsy or my Patreon, there will be a link in the description down below, along with a description of the cast and the crew to the film. And on my Patreon, I will also have my exclusive Charcy chats there now. I just feel way more comfortable just putting my Charcy chats there for now, because I'm noticing way more often that people are getting really, really crude and weird with their comments. And in fact, there's one that I'm going to be talking about in the future Charcy chats up there. So please come join my Patreon, and on the screen you can see a shout out to my fellow Patreon members, and a huge thank you to every single one of you that comes and joins me on there, and a special shout out to my Ultimate Luxes. So a special thank you to Kurt, Chris Bruner, LJ Christensen, and to the No Pants Ninja. So thank you so much for being an Ultimate Lux with me. Come join me in the afterlife of the party, because I am the afterlife of the party. And always remember to slay, subscribe, like, and always be yourself. Until next time, my little Luxes, have a Luxy Charms kind of day. Bye!